They say money buys freedom, but they never tell you whose freedom it really buys. Because in this world, freedom isn't earned, it's taken. And the price is not hard work, or luck, or honesty. It's ruthlessness. The gentle dream of wealth as liberation is a myth sold by those already in control. Machiavelli would tell you, money doesn't set you free. It tests whether you have the strength to live without mercy. The rich may look free, but only a few are untouchable. The rest, they've simply traded cages from poverty to dependence, from hunger to fear of losing what feeds them. So the question isn't how to make money. The question is, can you rule it without letting it own your soul? They say money creates freedom, but what they forget to mention is that freedom, in this world, is rationed. It is distributed in doses, measured, priced, and often weaponized. Those who cannot see this mistake comfort for liberation, consumption for control, and wealth for worth. They think buying options is the same as having choices, but it isn't, because options can be revoked, choices can be restricted, and wealth, if it depends on permission, is not freedom, it's a leash made of gold. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, when he wrote that power belongs not to those who possess, but to those who decide what possession means. The illusion of freedom is the most sophisticated trap the powerful have ever built. It doesn't imprison the body, it seduces the mind. It whispers, work harder, climb higher, and one day you'll own your time. But by the time you reach the top, you realize the summit is guarded. Every promotion, every transaction, every raise is another invisible signature binding you to a system that only rewards obedience disguised as ambition. Money, in the hands of the naive, is not a tool, it's anesthesia. It dulls the pain of dependence long enough for people to mistake sedation for peace. They call it financial security, but it's nothing more than managed fear. You fear losing your job, your clients, your investments, your lifestyle, so you obey. You adapt your opinions to remain employable. You censor your truth to remain likable. And you call it professionalism. You don't own your time. You rent it back from the system that convinced you to sell it in the first place. Freedom, real freedom, begins when you no longer fear losing what you've earned. When the loss of money doesn't bend your spine or silence your tongue. That is the moment when money ceases to be your master and becomes your instrument. But almost no one reaches that point because society doesn't reward detachment, it rewards dependence. It glorifies those who appear free while chained to invisible masters. It teaches you to chase liberty through labor, ignoring the paradox that true liberty begins only when you stop running. The illusion works because it feeds the ego. Money gives you status, and status makes you feel seen, but being seen is not the same as being safe. Attention is a currency with terrible interest. It must constantly be fed, and the cost is authenticity. To maintain the image of freedom, you must perform it. You must show that you are thriving, even when you're exhausted. You must look successful, even when you're indebted. The world doesn't want your truth, it wants your projection. And the longer you perform it, the further you drift from yourself. The tragedy is not that people are enslaved by money, it's that they mistake their chains for trophies. They polish their cages, decorate them with luxury, and call it achievement. They celebrate debt as progress, dependence as partnership, subservience as stability. The powerful don't need to control such people. They simply let them feel rewarded for staying trapped. That's why the system never collapses. It doesn't need violence to survive. It just needs you to keep believing that the next paycheck, the next promotion, the next investment will finally make you free. But Machiavelli knew that freedom is not given, it is taken, and taking it requires ruthlessness. Because freedom is not compatible with comfort. It demands risk, isolation, and often sacrifice. The man who seeks freedom must be willing to live without applause. He must detach from validation, from dependence, from the emotional need to be accepted by those who still worship the illusion. That detachment is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the understanding that you cannot be both loved by the system and free from it. There's a reason why the powerful rarely speak of freedom. They don't need to. Their silence is the proof of it. Freedom is not something they chase, it's something they enforce. Through ownership, through control of flow, through the ability to say no without consequence. And that is the secret hidden behind the illusion. The appearance of freedom is for the masses. The experience of it is reserved for those who can afford detachment. The world sells liberty in installments, but only the ruthless buy it in full. The illusion of freedom thrives on one emotion: fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of falling behind. The poor fear hunger, the rich fear exposure, and the middle fear insignificance. Everyone's cage looks different, but the lock is the same. It's psychological. It's the quiet terror of losing what defines you. The Machiavellian understands that whoever controls fear controls behavior. And in modern society, money is simply the most efficient delivery system for fear ever invented. That's why the illusion is so durable. It doesn't force compliance, it seduces it. It makes you grateful for what enslaves you. It convinces you that dependence is stability, that comfort is peace, and that obedience is virtue. The more you gain, the more you fear losing it, until you mistake anxiety for responsibility. You call it discipline, ambition, maturity, but underneath, it's still fear. The system doesn't need to chain you, it only needs to make you afraid to walk away. Freedom, in the Machiavellian sense, is not the absence of limits, it's the mastery of them. It's the ability to shape your environment instead of being shaped by it. And that begins with a single, dangerous act: questioning the stories you've been told about success, because every generation is trained to believe that the road to freedom is paved with compliance. Study hard, work hard, save, invest, retire. But by the time you've earned enough to stop obeying, you no longer remember how to live without permission. So the question is not, how much do you need to be free? The real question is, how much are you willing to lose and remain unbroken? Because the answer to that defines your actual wealth. Freedom, Machiavelli would say, belongs to those who have mastered the art of loss. The ruthless don't cling to comfort, they weaponize it. They build wealth, not as a pillow, but as armor. And when the storm comes, they don't beg for shelter. They simply move through it untouched. Because their freedom was never built on the illusion of permanence. It was built on the discipline of independence. The illusion of freedom dies the moment you stop fearing instability. When you stop seeing money as security and start seeing it as leverage. When you realize that every paycheck, every possession, every deal can vanish and you will still be you. Then, and only then, does money serve you instead of seduce you. Because the ruthless don't use money to escape fear. They use fear to understand money. And that is the first truth Machiavelli would whisper in your ear. Most people don't want freedom. They want comfort dressed as control. And they will spend their entire lives paying for it. Freedom without strength is fantasy. To hold power, you must first stop apologizing for wanting it. The world will tell you that ruthlessness is cruelty, that ambition is greed, that detachment is arrogance. They tell you this because the obedient fear those who can't be manipulated by guilt. The ruthless are not born unfeeling. They simply learn that mercy, when used without calculation, becomes a weapon turned inward. To Machiavelli, ruthlessness was not brutality. It was control over the heart. The weak confuse compassion with surrender. They believe that kindness must always be unconditional, that forgiveness is virtue, even when it breeds betrayal. But the ruthless understand that in a world governed by appetite, survival requires boundaries sharper than sympathy. You cannot save everyone and remain sovereign. To protect your freedom, you must choose who deserves your mercy and who earns your silence. The ruthless mindset begins with emotional discipline. It's not about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. Every empire that fell did so not from lack of wealth, but from indulgence. The rulers who lost their thrones weren't conquered. They became soft. They mistook comfort for loyalty and compassion for safety. The ruthless never make that mistake. They know that luxury dulls instinct, and approval is the first drug of dependence. Ruthlessness is clarity without permission. It's the refusal to let emotion dictate action. It's the ability to look at a friend, a lover, or a partner and see their potential for betrayal as clearly as their affection. Not to hate them, but to prepare. The weak call this paranoia. The powerful call it foresight, because every human relationship is a negotiation of control, and pretending otherwise is the first act of self-deception. In a Machiavellian world, morality is a mask, useful, beautiful, but never sacred. The ruthless wear it when it serves them and remove it when it doesn't. They don't lie to destroy trust. They lie to preserve structure. They understand that truth, when used recklessly, can destabilize alliances faster than deceit ever could. Truth is a currency. You don't spend it all at once. You release it strategically, to shape perception, to test loyalty, to expose weakness. The fool seeks to be honest. The strategist seeks to be effective. But make no mistake, the ruthless are not heartless. Their strength lies in restraint, not in violence. They don't react, they calculate. They don't chase, they attract. Their calm is terrifying because it cannot be provoked. That's why others project evil onto them. They mistake composure for coldness, focus for absence of empathy. Yet, what they truly fear is not the ruthless man's cruelty. It's his independence. You cannot control someone who does not need your approval. And that, more than anything, is what makes ruthlessness so rare. The ruthless mind is immune to distraction. While others compete for attention, validation, and applause, the ruthless build in silence. They understand that attention is a form of dependence. Once people know you crave it, they can feed or starve you with ease. So the ruthless cultivate invisibility. They move like shadows, striking only when the impact is irreversible. They don't announce intentions, they let outcomes speak. To be ruthless is to operate without emotional permission. It's to accept that not every battle deserves your sword, not every insult deserves your energy, not every betrayal deserves your explanation. You conserve power by choosing where to fight and where to vanish. In this world, reaction is weakness, stillness is strategy. The ruthless don't seek revenge, they design consequences. And when those consequences arrive, they do so with the inevitability of gravity. Machiavelli would tell you, mercy has hierarchy. You show it downward, never sideways. You forgive the weak to demonstrate dominance, not vulnerability. You never beg the strong for fairness, you learn how to outlast them. Ruthlessness is patience sharpened by purpose. It's the long game, sacrificing short-term peace for long-term control. The ruthless don't rush to prove themselves. They let time erode their opponents, because time, not talent, decides who truly has power. Those who act from emotion burn fast. Those who act from strategy burn forever. You cannot be ruthless if you're still ruled by the fear of being misunderstood. The world will always call the strong heartless, because the weak must explain their submission somehow. They will say you've changed, that you've become distant, cold, impossible to reach. Let them. Distance is the tax of clarity. Every step you take toward freedom requires shedding someone who preferred you obedient. Ruthlessness isn't about hurting others. It's about refusing to be hurt by expectations that keep you small. There's an art to saying no without justification. The ruthless master it. They understand that explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation dilutes power. Every time you justify your boundaries, you give others a map of how to cross them. So you don't explain, you decide, you move. Silence, to the ruthless, is the purest form of dominance. It denies others the illusion of influence. But here's the paradox. The ruthless often look lonely, yet they're never alone. They surround themselves not with flatterers, but with function. Every person in their circle serves a purpose, just as they themselves serve a purpose in others' lives. There is no illusion of unconditional loyalty, only aligned interest. The ruthless build networks, not friendships, alliances, not attachments. They understand that emotional currency must be backed by leverage. Love without leverage is liability. The weak crave validation. The ruthless crave control. But control doesn't mean tyranny. it means stability. The ruthless don't need to dominate every detail. They simply ensure that nothing can dominate them. That's why they're calm. They have structured their dependencies so carefully that no single loss can collapse their world. That is the foundation of true freedom. Multiple sources of strength, no single point of failure. The ruthless mindset is not born from greed, it's born from awareness. Once you see how fragile comfort is, how easily affection turns into leverage, how quickly dependence becomes obedience, you either harden or you vanish. The ruthless choose to harden. They stop playing for approval and start playing for position, because in every system, someone writes the rules and someone obeys them. The ruthless write. They don't chase fairness because fairness doesn't exist. They chase equilibrium, the kind maintained through subtle threat, quiet leverage, and psychological gravity. They don't waste time proving their worth. They let others measure their silence and draw their own fearful conclusions. This is how authority is born, not from noise, but from mystery. Machiavelli's lesson was simple. You can be good or you can be free. The world rarely allows both. The ruthless choose freedom, and they bear the loneliness that comes with it. But within that solitude lies something unbreakable, a mind no longer tethered to permission, a will no longer seduced by praise. To become ruthless is not to lose your humanity. It's to master it, to dissect your own emotions until they serve strategy instead of sabotage, to feel everything but obey nothing, to look at the world's chaos and remain still, not because you don't care, but because you understand the game. That is the ruthless mindset, the quiet fury of control, the discipline of detachment, the elegance of survival. And when others mistake your calm for cruelty, your distance for arrogance, your silence for indifference, let them. They are simply describing the symptoms of your freedom. Money is never the real source of power. It is only the symbol, the illusion that power can be stored, counted, or transferred. The true power lies in control, in the invisible strings that guide where money flows, when it stops, and who is left starving when it dries up. The weak chase possession, the ruthless pursue control. Because to possess is temporary, but to control is perpetual. Machiavelli would say that a wise ruler never hoards gold for its own sake. He manipulates trust, fear, and need, the currencies that never lose value. A man who controls trust can command loyalty. A man who controls fear can command obedience. But the one who controls need, he commands both. Money is merely the modern mask of need. Whoever dictates its movement dictates human behavior. In every hierarchy, control flows downward, but dependency flows upward. The worker depends on the employer, but the employer depends on the market. The citizen depends on the government, but the government depends on perception. The illusion of freedom remains intact as long as everyone feels indispensable, when in truth, everyone is replaceable except those who control dependency itself. Those are the truly free. Those are the untouchables. To the ruthless, leverage is not manipulation, it's architecture. It's the design of systems where others act in your interest, even when you're absent. You don't control them by force. You align their incentives so tightly with yours that resistance becomes self-destruction. That is the highest form of control, not domination, but orchestration. When your silence moves people more than their orders, you have achieved mastery. Leverage in the modern world is the new nobility. Titles no longer matter. Bloodlines no longer matter. Only leverage does. The new aristocrats are those who can influence outcomes without appearing involved. They move markets with rumors, shift emotions with algorithms, rewrite history with media. Their power is invisible, and that is what makes it absolute. The visible ruler is always a pawn of those who remain unseen. Dependency is the foundation of every empire. Rome was not held together by virtue, it was held together by dependency. Soldiers depended on pay, provinces on protection, and citizens on bread. Remove dependency, and the empire crumbles overnight. The modern world is no different. We depend on wages, on data, on validation, on dopamine. The system doesn't need to chain us. It just keeps us craving. Dependency is the leash, and desire is the hand that holds it. The ruthless understand this. They don't eliminate dependency, they reverse it. They make others depend on them. It's not about cruelty, it's about equilibrium. In every exchange, someone relies more. The ruthless ensure it's never them. They structure their lives so that every partnership, every relationship, every contract is tilted slightly in their favor. Not enough to provoke rebellion, just enough to guarantee survival. It's not domination, it's insurance. Control is not about owning everything. It's about being the one no one can afford to lose. The powerful don't need to shout or threaten. They just need to make withdrawal their weapon. Their absence is more dangerous than their presence. When you can walk away without consequence and others cannot, you have leverage. When people adjust their behavior to keep you near, you are no longer negotiating, you are ruling. But control requires distance. Emotional proximity clouds judgment. The ruthless maintain space, not because they lack empathy, but because they understand its volatility. Attachment is leverage handed away. The moment someone knows you need them, they can extract concessions. That is why the ruthless never reveal dependency. Not even love is immune. They may love deeply, but quietly, without surrender. They understand that even affection can become a transaction, and they prefer to remain the creditor, not the debtor. In the Machiavellian view, morality must serve control, not sabotage it. Mercy is valuable only when it reinforces authority. Generosity is wise only when it deepens dependency. The weak give to be liked. The strong give to be needed. Every act of kindness is a contract disguised as compassion. The ruthless don't donate, they invest. They don't forgive, they reposition. They turn sentiment into structure. Modern society confuses equality with fairness, but fairness is an illusion crafted by those who already control the scales. Equality is never the goal, balance is. And balance, to the ruthless, is never achieved through compromise, it's achieved through leverage. They don't beg for fairness, they design environments where fairness becomes irrelevant. When you own the system, every outcome favors you by default. Technology has turned control into science. Data is the new Machiavellian tool, subtler, faster, limitless. Algorithms now do what armies once did, enforce obedience invisibly. The powerful no longer need to conquer nations, they just need to harvest attention. Every click is compliance, every scroll a confession. The illusion of choice hides the precision of control. And the ruthless, the true architects stand behind the curtain, shaping the stage on which the rest of humanity performs. But power is a delicate balance. Control too tightly, and rebellion brews. Loosen too much, and chaos spreads. The ruthless know that stability lies in calculated vulnerability. You must let others feel powerful enough to obey willingly. You give them victories that cost you nothing but buy you loyalty. The wise ruler never humiliates his servants. He allows them pride as long as that pride serves the throne. In modern terms, you make your subordinates feel autonomous, while their options secretly lead only back to you. Leverage also demands patience. You cannot force dependence. You must cultivate it. Like a web, it must be spun quietly, with precision, until movement itself becomes captivity. The ruthless think in decades, not days. While others chase applause, they are building structures that will outlive attention. They understand that real control is invisible until it's irreversible. Dependency is not inherently evil, it's inevitable. Humans are interdependent creatures. The Machiavellian simply ensures that the dependency benefits them more than it costs. To achieve that, one must master two arts, detachment and timing. Detachment allows you to remain unshaken when dependency shifts. Timing allows you to act before the shift becomes visible. The ruthless anticipate dependency patterns before others feel them. They are always 2 moves ahead, not because they predict, but because they prepare. Freedom, paradoxically, is found not in rejecting control, but in mastering it. The one who understands control no longer fears being controlled. He can enter any system, adapt to any hierarchy, and still remain untouched. Because his allegiance is not emotional, it's strategic. The ruthless serve only until service becomes submission. Then they disappear quietly, without warning, without regret. Machiavelli would remind us, he who depends on fortune must obey it. He who creates fortune commands it. The modern ruthless know this truth well. They create systems that make fortune dependent on them. Their clients need their presence. Their partners need their access. Their enemies need their silence. Every interaction becomes asymmetric. Every connection, a quiet anchor of control. And that is the essence of leverage. Not dominance through fear, but influence through necessity. Not ruling by command, but ruling by absence. When your existence itself becomes infrastructure, you are no longer a player in the game. You are the board. Freedom is not the opposite of control. It is the mastery of it. The naive think freedom means escape, no rules, no constraints, no authority. But the ruthless know that chaos is not liberty. It's dependency disguised as choice. Real freedom begins the moment you understand that every man lives under a system. The question is not whether you serve, but whether the system serves you. Machiavelli warned that liberty without structure decays into servitude, because when a man frees himself from one master, he becomes enslaved to another. The crowd, desire, comfort, or the illusion of independence. The masses shout for freedom while chaining themselves to consumption. They work not to live, but to sustain the lifestyle that makes them feel alive. They are prisoners of their own comfort. And the more they earn, the tighter the leash becomes. The ruthless see this differently. They don't reject the system, they reprogram it. They understand that to be free, you must design a world where dependence works in your favor. You don't destroy the hierarchy. You become the axis around which it spins. Freedom, to the ruthless, is not about walking away from the table. It's about owning the table, the chairs, and the rules of the game. Only then can you decide when to sit and when to flip it. The architecture of untouchable freedom is built on 3 pillars: control of time, control of attention, and control of consequence. Each one demands sacrifice. Each one filters the weak from the wise. The first pillar, control of time. Most people trade their time because they believe money will buy it back. But money can't purchase time, it only rents relief from urgency. The ruthless never sell time, they sell results. They build machines, systems, and reputations that generate without their presence. They don't hustle endlessly, they design leverage endlessly. They understand that time is not money. Time is life, and the man who sells life for comfort will never be free. To control your time, you must be willing to suffer what others avoid: silence, boredom, solitude. Because in solitude, vision compounds. In noise, it dies. The second pillar, control of attention. Attention is the new currency of civilization. It builds empires faster than armies and destroys reputations faster than scandal. The ruthless control attention, not by begging for it, but by directing it. They decide what others look at, what they envy, what they believe is worth chasing. Every leader, every brand, every ideology is a machine for shaping attention. The weak seek visibility, the strong seek gravity, that silent pull that makes the world orbit you without understanding why. The less you demand attention, the more the world gives it. Because restraint, in an age of desperation, looks like divinity. The third pillar, control of consequence. This is the rarest form of power. To control consequence means to act without fear of punishment, to make moves others hesitate to make because you've designed immunity into your position. The ruthless don't just make decisions, they build systems that absorb the risk. They have buffers, proxies, entities. They operate through layers so deep that blame dissolves before it reaches them. Freedom without consequence isn't luck, it's engineering. It's foresight disguised as fate. But these pillars require a foundation, the psychological armor of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means clarity. The ruthless can love deeply, build loyally, care passionately, but never lose the ability to walk away. They are loyal by choice, not by need. They can enjoy luxury without being owned by it. They can use money without worshiping it. Detachment is what separates rulers from servants, because the one who can leave at any time owns everything, even if he carries nothing. Machiavelli would say that every ruler must balance two instincts, the lion and the fox. The lion has strength, but no subtlety. The fox has cunning, but no power. The ruthless combine both. They can appear humble while planning domination, appear generous while structuring control, appear still while engineering empires beneath the surface. Freedom, to them, is not a feeling, it's a formula. Power multiplied by restraint, divided by visibility. The higher you rise, the more invisible you must become, because exposure is vulnerability, and admiration is the softest form of control. The moment people adore you, they start to own you. They expect you to perform the version of yourself they worship. The ruthless refuse to play that role. They prefer silence to applause, privacy to popularity. They understand that true freedom is anonymity bought with influence. To be known by many is to be owned by perception. To be known by few is to be untouchable. But freedom also demands cost, emotional, ethical, existential. The ruthless don't avoid that cost. They calculate it. Every choice must pay its debt in solitude. The price of autonomy is isolation, because when you no longer depend on others, you also detach from their approval. The crowd calls it loneliness. The ruthless call it clarity. They know that no empire, internal or external, can be built without distance. The paradox of freedom is that it can only exist within limits. Without self-control, freedom becomes indulgence. Without direction, it becomes decay. The ruthless impose discipline, not because they crave order, but because chaos serves no one. They see self-control as the highest currency, more valuable than gold, rarer than genius. A man who cannot command himself will forever obey those who can. In the end, money does create freedom, but only for those ruthless enough to master themselves before mastering others. The weak believe freedom means having more options. The strong know it means needing fewer. The masses chase wealth to escape insecurity. The ruthless build security so they can ignore wealth. The weak spend their lives proving they deserve abundance. The strong simply design it. Freedom, to the Machiavellian mind, is not an emotion. It's a structure, quiet, efficient, and unyielding. It's built on ownership, protected by secrecy, and powered by leverage. You don't need to show it, you need to embody it. When you walk into a room and every person senses you answer to no one, not because you say it, but because your presence declares it, that is the apex of financial evolution. That is sovereignty. The final test of power is not how much you can acquire, but how much you can refuse. The world tempts the weak with endless choices, distractions, and pleasures. The ruthless choose only what serves the design. They reject noise, vanity, comparison. They live deliberately, like generals marching through luxury without losing formation. Freedom without discipline is rebellion without direction. It burns bright, but it dies young. So, what does untouchable freedom look like? It's not a mansion, it's not a title, it's not the number in your account. It's the quiet certainty that no one can pull you from your path. It's waking up knowing your income, your status, your reputation, none of them can be weaponized against you. It's the ability to stand alone in any room, any crisis, any empire, and remain unshaken. Machiavelli understood that the world is not ruled by the virtuous, but by the calculated, and calculation is not cruelty, it's awareness sharpened into art. The ruthless are not heartless. They are simply unwilling to let emotion dictate empire. They do not seek destruction, only design, because they know the highest form of freedom is not to escape the game, but to rewrite it so that even when they're absent, their influence remains, echoing through the moves of others. That is the essence of Machiavellian wealth. Money creates freedom, but only for those ruthless enough to understand that freedom is not given. It is built, brick by brick, mind by mind, until the world itself becomes your reflection. Not because you control it by force, but because you've mastered the one empire that can never be taken: yourself.